I'm going to tell you about the Alfa Practik 9 sewing machine. Now, if you haven't heard of Alfa, and you could be forgiven for not hearing about them, it's a Spanish company and they still design and manufacture the machines in Spain. The Alfa Hogan company is actually over 100 years old. First started in around about 1920, but they started making Smith Wesson pistols, so you've probably heard of those, the cowboy guns. Thankfully they switched to more peaceful tools, but it's great quality engineering goes into these machines. So here we are, we're in early December, so a lot of minds will have been turning to getting them a sewing machine for Christmas, either for yourself or for someone else, perhaps a child. So the reason I want to tell you about this machine is it's not in that really low budget starter mode of machine, that starter level, but please avoid those machines. They're very limited in features, they're fairly poor quality, and they actually can do more harm to put someone off sewing than they do to encourage it. So I'm going to explain the features of the Alfa. It's a full grown-up sewing machine with proper grown-up features which will allow someone's work and their skills to develop. So here's what you're needing to look for when you're buying a machine. So first of all, it's difficult to tell what's inside, but it's actually the quality of the motor and the gears and all the mechanics inside which determine whether it's good or bad quality. And what you're looking for is something really sturdy and strong. So we have the weight here, it's somewhere in the region of 7 to 8 kilos. So it's a good decent weight. So it's not going to suffer from vibration issues. That means most of the parts are going to be metal rather than plastic for the much lighter machines. We also have a full range of features. So we have our stitch selector dial. Now I love these soft touch handles here. This knob on the side is your stitch selector, and the stitch you've chosen is illuminated in this window. We have independent stitch length. Again, a very important feature to have on your machine. Those very basic machines with one central control knob which does everything are extremely limiting, very frustrating. They only give you maybe 2 or 3 stitch lengths, neither of which is long enough to do any tacking. Usually they're actually so tiny you can't take them out. So independent stitch length, definitely the way to go. We also have an independent stitch width dial. Now that controls the swing of the needle. So with length we have stitches from 0 to 4. With width we have the width from 0 to 5, that's millimetres. So again, if you're buying a machine, make sure it's got independent stitch length and width features. The stitches here, less important is the number of stitches a machine has. I know everyone gets so focused on how many stitches does it have. That's less important than getting the quality of the machine itself. If you're buying it for dressmaking, you're only going to need straight stitch, zigzag, and perhaps a blind hem and a buttonhole. So again, another important feature of the Alfa Practik 9 is that it's got a one-step or fully automatic buttonhole. That makes sewing a buttonhole so easy, you're more inclined to want to do it. If you've got to fiddle about changing your knobs and controls for every single stage, as you do for a 4-step buttonhole, you're less inclined to want to make buttonholes. They're also not, it's not easy to get them even and accurate, whereas you just hand it all over to the machine does it all. They come out perfect every time. So we have the accessories box on the front. If you take that off, the Alfa also comes with the supplementary extension table. So again, this makes this a great little machine for quilters. Has lots of lovely decorative stitches, and you get the extension table. which is fitted quite easily, or if you want to make larger garments. And it's good sturdy quality as well. We have a front loading bobbin here. Again, it's all very nicely finished off inside. There's nothing rough about it. That's how you can tell a poor quality machine. The metal's very rough inside. We have our tension dial here. We have a reverse lever for sewing backwards to anchor your stitches. And that is pretty much the Alfa Practik 9. So I'm going to take you through a range of tests to show you what this machine is capable of. I thought I'd do a quick rundown of the accessories the machine comes with. First we have the buttonhole foot, and this is for the fully automatic style of machine. You slide the back section up, pop your button in, and ready to go. So the machine will calculate the length of the buttonhole needed for you. We have a zip foot, we have a foot for sewing buttons on, we have a quilt bar or a stitch guide, we have a foot to cover the feed dogs, so you can do free motion or darning. You don't get the drop feed facility on this machine, but it does come with this handy little cover. We've got a little screwdriver, we've got 4 bobbins, some oil, your cleaning brush and quick unpick, and spare needles. So it's reasonably well equipped for the price of £219, which is more than you would get with a lot of other machines in its price range. It also has a very powerful 70-watt motor, which again isn't very common in the sort of budget starter range of machines, or any machines of this sort of price range. This is not a how to sew video, okay, so I'm not going to show you how to thread all the machine up and wind bobbins. Suffice to say that it's got a very easy numbered threading system. Just go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 into the needle. The bobbin is already put in as well. I've taken that liberty. But it is a really easy little machine to use. I also love its quirky styling. So I'm just going to show you how do you test a sewing machine? How do you know what it should do? So first of all, I've just got some ordinary midweight cotton calico. I'm just going to try it out for stitch quality. So I'm going to use about 2.5mm stitch. I've got my straight stitch set. And I'm going to do a reverse. If I could get my pedal in the right place. So I'm going to do a reverse stitch. Now I find this a very easy machine to control. The foot pedal is extremely sensitive, so the machine does not run away with you. If you press lightly, it will go slowly. You want it a bit faster, you press harder. Simple as that. So it's a very easy machine. Look at that. Instantly controllable. We've got our cutter on the side, and I also omitted to mention there's an automatic needle threader, which makes life much easier. This machine has never failed to hit the target every time. So there we go. It's got beautiful even stitch quality. It doesn't vibrate around like a lot of budget machines that are very light, so they bounce around on the table. The Alfa has enough solidity and stability to give you a good stitch quality. So I've actually got a different colour in the bobbin there. You can see that stitch quality, perfectly even and straight. So first test, passed. So let's try it now on a zigzag stitch. So we have all these stitches on our little retractable stitch guide here. So I'm going to turn it to B. Oops, other way, B for a zigzag stitch. Also forgot to mention there is 2 retractable vertical spool pins there. So you can just pop them down to pack the machine away. And they're sturdy metal as well, they're not plastic. Often the cheap plastic ones break off very easily. So I'm going to have a go now at doing a zigzag down this edge. So I'm going to select my stitch width of 5mm. I also want to, in fact I'm going to leave it on 2.5mm just now for the length. I'll show you why you need to have independent control of these 2 dials. So again, for the very basic machines, you generally only have a choice of 1 or 2 set stitches, and again, they're very limiting. If your edge starts to buckle up, you may need to tweak some of these settings. Of course, you can't do that. So what you end up with is a very puckered, bumpy edge. So let me have a look at this. Now that is a lovely quality stitch. It's done the job of neatening this edge. There's not an awful lot going to come out of there. But something I like to do is turn my stitch length down. I'm going to select something more like 1mm or 1.5, and that gives you a look which is actually more like an overlock stitch. So I think that actually gives you a really lovely looking and very firm edge, and you could be fooled for thinking that was overlock. So what next? Okay, let's try a buttonhole. So I'm going to get my buttonhole foot. This says it's an easy slide system. Pop the buttonhole foot on. Easy clip system release at the back. Change the feet. I'm going to pop this on. So we have our buttonhole indicator lever tucked up here just behind the threader here. So pull that all the way down and push it backwards until you hear it click. So I'm just going to do a buttonhole on this piece of fabric. So I'm going to select my buttonhole indicator here. I've got my buttonhole indicator length here. I'm going to leave it on 5mm. Let's see what we get. So pop my foot in and off I go. I'm just going to hold this thread to prevent it being stitched in. Okay, so that's what a fully automatic buttonhole feature does. It's so quick and easy to use. Right, so I want to show you some of the stitching capability of this machine. So I'm going to show you the robust test, i.e. how thick and how many layers of fabric can it cope with. So back to standard pressure foot. We can pop that up. Back to straight stitch. Right, so coat easily on 2 layers of calico. So here I have some thick canvas, upholstery cotton. So let me try four layers. Okay, so that's fairly bulky. Now the Alfa has an additional lift feature, which means if you push up on the presser foot, it has extra height so you can get bulky fabrics underneath. But 4 layers shouldn't even break a sweat. So there we go, absolutely no issue whatsoever. Okay, 5, 6, 7, 8. So look at the thickness of this fabric I'm going to put underneath here. Okay, so we're getting to the limit of the amount of fabric which would go under the foot when it's naturally raised. However, again, additional lift, slides under easily. Foot down, off we go. Absolutely not a problem, no hesitation whatsoever. So there's none of that horrid whininess that you get when you're asking the machine to do too much. I'm going to try and sneak one more layer. In fact, no, I'm going to be back. I'm going to grab my scissors, cut some more of this. Okay, so that's my original 8 layers. There's another 2, another 4. Right, additional lift gives us versatility. Now, this must be something like 12mm thick, this fabric I'm putting under here. So I'm going to go easy. Still standard, I think a size 80 needle, universal tip. So I'm going to take it a little bit gently at first. So what I can feel as the powerful feed is grasping the fabric and pulling it through. I'm not sensing any struggling of the motor at all to punch its way through that fabric. 12 layers, that's unbelievable. Like soft butter. Now that's impressive. So another test I like to try on machines is, can they handle jersey knit fabric, so your stretch t-shirt fabric. A lot of beginners machines really struggle and they just chew it up. It's awful. So again, it's all about the quality of the feed. Can the machine handle stretch fabric? So I've got this, now this isn't pure cotton, there's some sort of polyester or synthetic in this, and to add to the difficulty, it's striped. So I have pinned all my stripes together. So are we going to get that slippage and end up with mismatched stripes or any puckering or chewing up of the fabric? Well, let's see. So although we have a generous selection, let me show you, generous selection of stretch stitches here and decorative stitches. The stitch I like to use for sewing jersey knit is just a regular zigzag, but what I do is I make it very narrow. So again, a reason to have independent stitch with control. So I'm going to choose just B, zigzag stitch. And now I may need to test this just to see if it's going to be the stitch I want, but I'm going to have it just less than 1 millimetre wide. So it's almost going to look like a straight stitch, but it will still retain a little bit of give. So, and I'm going to use a 15 millimetre seam. So what I'm finding is the fabric is feeding unevenly. It's not ruffling up at the front. The feed isn't chewing it. So it's looking good so far. Right, so there's my stitching. It's just off a straight stitch. It's only very slightly a zigzag stitch, but it still retains its stretch. And that means when we open it up, it's quite secure. So you don't get that awful effect that you do if you use a straight stitch or a zigzag stitch. The stripes are still pretty well aligned. Quite impressive with that actually. Beautiful. It's flat. There's no puckering or gathering or wrinkling of my jersey knit fabric. So again, that's another test this machine has sailed through. Right, another of those difficult fabrics. This slippy, shiny polyester satin. So again, finer fabrics and slippy fabrics like this often get chewed up and end up looking like the puppy has been playing with it. So let's have a go. We're back to a regular straight stitch. Now I've got my stitch length about 2.5, maybe just slightly less than 2.5 millimetres. Again, beautiful stitching, absolutely no sign of any wrinkling or puckering. And again, obviously it needs a press, but that seam will press out completely beautifully flat and smooth. So yeah, I really love this machine. I can't believe it's only £219. It's worth far more in my eyes, and the dealer isn't getting it back. My final test is for the stitch appearance. So I see a lot of machines with 200 stitches, particularly some of those digital ones they're selling in the budget supermarkets. But when you stitch them out, they don't look anything like they're meant to. And quite often, either there's gaps between the stitching or the fabric's very puckered. So let's try out a few of these lovely stitches. So first of all, let us select, why don't we go for this lovely checkerboard thing? So I'm going to select my stitch G on the top line. Okay, let's have a go. So again, when you're testing a machine, always use at least double layer of fabric. Again, no need to change the foot. It's quite a universal foot, does everything. I'm going to turn my stitch width up because I want the maximum stitch width. Let's try 3 on the length. Again, this is where your stitch selection dials are useful to change the appearance of these stitches if you want them wider or longer. Right, so that's pretty spaced out. So we're needing to go much shorter with that one. And sometimes it's just a case of testing out to see which. Now I'm starting to get a little checkerboard effect there. So actually what I want is a very, very short stitch length on that one. So I'm going to try H now. H is looking quite attractive, this lovely scallop. So let's give this a go. Again, I've got my stitch length turned right down, so my stitches are going to be very close together, which is going to give me like a satin stitch effect. Right, let's see how that looks. Now the lovely little shell scallop design there. That makes a very pretty edging. So yes, the stitches do look very alike the way they're meant to. That looks exquisite actually, beautiful. So I've taken the liberty of already testing quite a few stitches, and I'm really impressed. They're all beautiful quality, they're even, there's no puckering of the fabric, they look the way they're meant to, and having your independent controls is giving you quite a lot of choice in the way the stitch comes out. So all in all, this is an awesome machine.